Hey guys, thanks for pressing play. Great to see you. Well, we're back with Mr. E. Mr. E is back for part 2. Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to fill in some blanks. We're going to get you some new stories. We're going to hear some new things, some updates, some confirmations, and basically just have a great time walking around Untermyer Park with the great Mr. E, who's graciously given us his time for another video. So thanks a lot. Let's just get started.
All right.
All right, cool. So great seeing you again.
Likewise.
How's it been since we saw you last time?
About the same.
I know
the weather's getting colder and
yeah, I know you're into hunting. How'd that go?
Went pretty good. I didn't get anything myself, but my boys did, and that's what it's all about at this point.
Oh, that's nice.
So they had a good year.
One day I want to actually go out and either hang out while that's happening or see it or participate in it, because I don't know, I'm getting to the point where, of course, groceries are too much money, and there's something about eating wild game that just appeals to me now.
Well, it's some of the best tasting meat and also the most nutritious that you can pretty much get out of buying anything from a store, that's for sure.
That's true. I think it has to do with like the fat content that they eat. They eat like real plants from nature, as opposed to this crap that they feed them in these industrial feedlots.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, the animal's gonna taste like what it's eating. So if it's eating garbage all the time, that's what it's gonna taste like. If it's eating stuff out in nature, then it's gonna be good.
Exactly. So we're once again, guys, out here at Untermeyer Park, dedicated to, of course, the Greek goddess Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. This is an occultist's playground, essentially. And so we wanted to get Mr. E back out because, well, we got a new story which we'll talk about, which was very personal to him. But also he had some thoughts on the Caveman. We're gonna go look for some hidden spots today. I think this goes in like that. Wow, nice. Check this out. Super cool. They got their Christmas lights up. And we basically just wanted to do another update. So for those who didn't see Mr. E's first video, you were actually one of the teenagers in the 80s who, while Maury Terry was out here in the woods filming with Unsolved Mysteries, you had an interaction with him. Why don't we just refresh the audience on that story again before we get into the new stuff?
Sure. Well, wow, they dressed the park up nice now. They never didn't see all these lights or anything when I was growing up, that's for sure.
Hell no.
But so basically, I grew up, the park was literally in my backyard, and my brother and a couple of my friends, we grew up, and we lived basically in the park every day. We'd come home from school, we'd be in the park all day until dark. We would, weekends, we'd be playing in the park. I mean, that's basically where we grew up. All throughout the 80s into the early 90s.
So this was, of course, after the Son of Sam era.
Yes. And it just happened one day, we were up in the park, I don't know, hanging out or playing or something, and we saw a guy with a couple film crew people walking on the aqueduct path. So we got interested and we walked over and asked them what they were doing, and it just happened to be, it was Maury Terry and Unsolved Mysteries, and they were doing a episode for TV, and they asked us if we knew anything about the park, and we told them that we've been here for, at that point, I was probably in the park 7-8 years throughout my early teens and whatnot, and they were very interested in having us show them around the park and give them some insights to what we knew.
Now, what year again was this?
This was around 1986.
Okay.
Somewhere right around there. It was 85, 86 that this occurred. And we wound up, my brother and one of my buddies, we wound up being in the Unsolved Mysteries episode. And they did an interview with me on it. And then we showed them all around the park. Showed them a lot of interesting things. They filmed a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And at one point, it got to where it was a whole neighborhood thing. they needed extra stand-ins for their filming and all, and everyone in the neighborhood got involved in this, and they thought it was the greatest thing to be on TV back at that point.
It was, and it was also great for the film crew because they can get all this cheap labor to work for them.
Oh yeah, it was. They gave us, I don't remember what it was. They gave everybody like $50 or something, or maybe it was $100.
Well, that's pretty good for back then.
Free food. And they were there for, I don't recall if it was 2 or 3 days, but they were there for 2 or 3 days. And
it was the summertime?
It was in the summer. Yep. Everything I remember was way overgrown, and if you watch that episode, you can see all the greenery in some of the shots and all. So it was probably July, I want to say, or so. I know we were out of school at that point, so it was over the summer.
Now, actually, this is a good segue because during that time, did you show Maury the Devil's Cave?
Yes, we showed Maury the Devil's Cave, among a lot of other little things that we came across over the years of playing in this park and investigating things when we were kids and whatnot.
Now, did you ever know about this when you were a kid?
Yes, this was all open. You could have just went right in here when I was growing up. We went in here probably dozens and dozens of times. It's a smaller room. It's not anything huge, but it's a little room that runs back into the steps and kind of angles itself down as it goes in the back.
I want to actually, I brought a trusty grid flashlight today because I've been trying to show this pentagram in there. Do you remember this pentagram?
Yes.
Let's see if we can get that. Let's find that pentagram. I think you could probably make that light less focused. Or, there we go. There we go. I think I see it in white. Right there.
Yeah, you can see that the star is in black. It looks like somebody went over it with an orange marker at some point.
Yeah.
But the original pentagram is probably the black in the back right there.
Right, exactly. Hold on, let me see. Now, you've been in this room.
Yes.
And how far does it go down this way?
It probably only goes down about maybe 30 feet, I would say. The ceiling starts caving down, angling down to follow the step structure.
Okay.
A lot of people just hung out in here and drank back in the day, and it was just all filled with broken bottles and glass and stuff.
Is there any more graffiti? Because we got a good flashlight now, we should take advantage of it.
There's another pentagram back over here on this.
Oh, let me. Hold on.
Am I getting that in there?
I think I can see it on camera.
It's another black one. It looks like, once again, there's orange marker over it, but you could see the black pentagram.
Hold on, where? Oh, I see.
It's big.
It's a big one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's hard to capture at that angle with the camera, but it's on a pillar, and I see it. It's another black one.
Yeah.
It seems like half broken. Like, it seems like someone broke the...
Yeah, it looks like someone broke the cement there for some reason, and
right.
Part of it got knocked out.
Right. That's super cool. So, because the last time we were here, we were talking about, like, tunnel systems, and if there was anybody to talk about that with, it was you, because as a kid here, you were, like, in every nook and cranny in this place, right?
Yes. Yeah, there was a lot of hidden rooms underground all around the park. Most of them were, I don't know if they were because the park has a lot of waterways going through it for some of the stuff they used to have, and maybe it was like rooms they built to get to pipe access, but there was just a lot of rooms, like maybe 15 by 15 foot rooms underground. Most of them, they're all covered with like iron plates, and then now over the years they've just been covered over with
seems like grass.
Erosion and all, yeah, grass and dirt and...
Right. But they're all still here, except for the Devil's Cave, no?
Yes.
Do you remember when the Devil's Cave was destroyed?
I think it was somewhere in the early to mid 90s, because I moved out of the area in 91, and it was still there when I moved out.
It was, because I heard it was destroyed in the mid 80s, so I was curious as to how you saw it with Maury Terry, but you're saying that that's wrong.
I can't quote me for sure, but I'm pretty confident it was somewhere around the early 90s. I know we showed at the Maury in '86 when we did the filming and all, and it was definitely there for at least a few more years later on.
Okay.
So it could have been late 80s or early 90, 88 to 91, somewhere in that area.
So my information about it being destroyed in '84 was not correct then.
No, definitely not.
I think it was over here. They built this parking lot that's beyond this fence.
Yeah, it was probably, once you get to the end of that parking lot there, it might have been another 20 feet or so in the back there.
And there's just no remnants of it now, right?
No, I saw a picture once a long time ago that they bulldozed over it, and it was just a pile of rubble.
Oh, man.
But I don't think there's anything there anymore at all. When the hospital built this lot over here, they pretty much just bulldozed over everything and took all the debris out.
Right. I wonder if anyone kept those stones that the graffiti was on, because it's pretty historical stuff at this point.
Yeah, yup.
So you saw all that graffiti back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. We used to. It wasn't real. The Devil's Cave wasn't as big as a lot of people might have thought it was. It was a room maybe about a 15 to 20 foot diameter. So it wasn't huge. It was only maybe about an 8-foot ceiling. So it was kind of a smaller, tighter structure. But once again, you had a lot of people that would go there. They would hang out and drink in there, and you'd have some homeless guys staying in there sometimes. And then there was always activity going on there too. I know a lot of the nurses and doctors and people in St. John's used to say that they could see the torches over there at night with people doing activity. And I know my mother used to work at St. John's, and I know she used to say the same thing, that she's witnessed the torches out the window multiple times.
So your parents were clearly aware of what was going on in this park. And sorry.
No, go ahead.
Did they warn you away? Like, what was the deal with that? Did they say, we know what's happening, stay away from this place? Like, what was their deal with you guys? Like, and trying to tell you this
they
stuff?
knew what was going on. I mean, I don't know if they know to the extent it was going on, but they definitely knew there was devil worship activity. Back then, that's what they used to call it, was devil worship. And they knew it was devil worship activity going on throughout the park in certain areas. And basically our rule was, when we were younger, they just told us, once it starts getting dark, get out of the park and get home. And other than that, they didn't have a problem with us being in here. And there was a lot of kids. I mean, we had groups of up to maybe 10 or 12 kids at some points. We'd be playing in the park, and also it wasn't like we were really going in here alone. I did share my definite number of experiences walking through the park alone, cutting through the park at certain intervals, because I used to date somebody that used to live on the Palisade Avenue section, and I used to cut through this park every night to and from her house too. And most of the time it was at night when I wasn't supposed to be.
Right.
But I cut through here a lot at night by myself, and it was definitely spooky back then.
Now, of course, Maury Terry was highly interested in what you had to say when you met him, because you were witness to certain things here.
Yes.
Let's just retell that story, just for the sake of anybody new who maybe didn't see your older video, and let's head down to the gatehouse, because I know you have a new story to tell us.
All right. Yeah, I mean, basically, the gatehouse was probably the #1 spot for activity with the devil worship and stuff going on back then. And we used to see at night, usually it was mostly on a Friday night, we'd be playing in the house a video game or something, me and my brother and a buddy or two, and then we would see headlights go by on the aqueduct path.
On the actual aqueduct itself?
On the path itself, where there was no motor vehicles supposed to be allowed driving on there. And we would, a couple of nights, well, I'll go back to the first night. The first night we saw this had to be back in, oh boy, maybe 82 or 83. Yeah, probably around 82. So my buddy and my brother and I saw the headlights, And it wasn't just one set of headlights. You saw over the course of maybe a half hour or so, you would see a half a dozen to a dozen sets of headlights come through. And we got up and we went out and we cut through the woods because we didn't want to go on the path and be exposed. And we followed the lights all the way down to the gatehouse here. And that was the first time we actually saw activity in person going on. And the cars were all parked at the gatehouse. There's a big gate on the front now. That was never like that. That was all open. So the cars would pull through that gate, and they would park on this little road section here.
Wow.
And you'd have a half a dozen or up to 10 cars at some points. And that's where the people would park. And they would have their satanic rituals right there in the gatehouse. And we experienced, I remember the very first ritual we experienced, it was my buddy and me. And we snuck through the woods, and we were probably over in this area. This was all heavy woods and thick brush, and
yeah, I remember
you
very
couldn't
well.
see at all. So we snuck down to probably about 40 or 50 feet away, which was pretty close by eye. But back then, with all the brush and stuff, and then at night, it was definitely not something they were able to see if they were looking into the woods, and they wouldn't even see us if they knew where we were. And we literally watched a ritual go on where they killed a German Shepherd dog. They had two guys hold the dog down on this little stone altar thing, and then they came out with some kind of saw or something, and they wound up cutting the head off the dog.
Oh, God. And you heard this.
And, oh, yeah, I mean, I think they might have had a muzzle or something on the dog because you heard it, like, whimpering and like, yelping, but it wasn't extremely loud.
Right.
So they might have had it muzzled, or they had it mouth taped or something like that.
Sounds like they had the mouth taped. That's freaking horrendous.
And this wound up becoming, because we were young kids, 12, 13. And,
so what year was this about?
This was around 82-ish.
Okay.
And then over the years, we just thought it was something interesting for us to do. I mean, we were intrigued and everything, and we would wait for the cars to drive up on a Friday night or a Saturday.
So it sounded like it was a regular occurrence.
Yeah, it was going on probably 2 or 3 times a month. A lot less in the winter. I don't recall if even in the winter, but definitely in the summer, spring, fall. It would be 2 times a month, sometimes 3 times a month. And we witnessed them kill everything from dogs to chickens to, I mean, birds, and they had all kinds of different animals. And we would usually find they would throw the carcasses. Sometimes they would bag them up, sometimes they wouldn't. And they would just dump them all around the park in different areas. And a lot of times we would come across the bodies, and we'd tell our parents, they'd call the police would come, they'd check it out, and then that would be it. And nothing would go on, nothing else happened until they had their next ritual set up. And this went on for, like I said, probably early 80s to like the late 80s, till I was old enough to start getting interested in other things. And that was that.
What I don't understand, though, and we kind of touched upon this last time we spoke, was, so it sounds like the police were contacted. How many times do you think the police were contacted?
Oh, I mean, I know a few other families in the neighborhood used to call and complain too, because a lot of times we would find these animals dumped off Odell Avenue.
Okay.
And I
They
guess
must have put them in the car and just drove out there and then dumped them right
They
on.
would drive, because you can't get through that way.
Right.
That pump house down at the other end there,
It
blocks the path for a car to get through. So you have to come in and out of Odell Avenue.
And Odell Avenue, for those who don't know, is up this way, not even, what, a quarter of a mile this way?
Yeah, a quarter mile or better.
You come to, and it's a main road.
Yeah, and they would basically come out to the end of the aqueduct. They would make a right on Odell Avenue. It'd start going up a hill, and then there's a wall there, and there's like probably a 15-foot or so drop off. And they would just, I guess, pull over in the middle of the night and just empty the trunk right over the embankment, down the wall, and into the woods. And,
Isn't that brazen, though? Because there's a lot of places that they could have thrown the bodies here where they wouldn't have been found. It's almost as if they didn't give a shit about people finding these things.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely found bodies all throughout the park, down this way here, over this way. So it wasn't like that was their certain only area.
Right, but
we definitely found them scattered through the park. But that area in particular, there was a lot of houses that was less than 100 yards away from all the houses on the back of Odell Avenue.
Right.
And I know a lot of the residents would call once they heard what happened, and they would call the police and complain. And I know at night when we started seeing the headlights, and my parents were privy to knowing what was going on now when we told them what we saw. And I know that they called, I couldn't tell you how many times, every time headlights would go by and we knew it was something going on. My parents would call the police sometimes, and they would say, hey, you know, we see the lights going on there again. And I mean, all it would have taken was them to block Odell Avenue off from the aqueduct, and they would have been stuck here. I mean, they could have had all the cars and all the people stuck and nowhere to go.
I never even thought about that, but you're right. So you guys would hang out watching just about where would you guys be?
Once again, this was all heavily wooded and thick, and we would probably be somewhere right up in this area here. I mean, sometimes a little further up on the hill because you can get a better vantage point from up at the top looking into the windows of the house. Sometimes we would be right in the front where the gates were because, like I said, the gates used to be opened and they were heavily filled with like vines and weeds and brush.
Right.
And we could just hide right behind the gates, and we would be 25 feet from here, and we would see what's going on.
And so what was the sounds that you were hearing coming out of here, besides the sounds of the animals?
We heard a lot of chanting. I mean, I remember it was a lot of chanting. These people were dressed in robes.
Do you remember what color robes?
I want to say dark purple or dark maroon. But I can't be positive on that because we always used to see them at night. They did have some torches lit up in there for lighting. But it was like a dark purple or a dark maroon from what I remember. And there would always be some chanting going on. Like a lot of one head guy, I guess, would say something, mumble something, and then they would respond. Almost like when you were in church.
And and when you heard all of this occurring, did the voices sound like teenagers, like grown men? What was the story there?
No, these were definitely not teenagers. These were older men. I mean, a couple of times when we came in and we saw them, we actually witnessed at one point one of the cars that pulled in, and it was just getting dark, so we still had a little light because it was summer, so it was maybe 9 at night. And we actually witnessed a guy carrying I think it was a cardboard box full of these robes from the car into here, and I guess they passed him out or whatever. But I mean, that was an older guy. I remember gray hair, like a guy probably in his 50s or older. And I mean, even when we heard the voices and stuff, it sounded like these were older people. They weren't like your typical teenagers that were a little older
like
than us,
Ozzy
running
fans.
around the park doing stupid stuff.
Right, it wasn't like
no.
Megadeth
This seemed like it was adults. I mean, number one, most of them were driving because there was a bunch of cars here, so they had to have driver's licenses.
Do you remember what kind of cars they were?
That I can't remember.
Like if they were luxury cars?
Yeah, I can't remember, to be honest. I don't remember if they were like upper class cars or luxury or. But this was definitely something that was set up, and this was something that was being done by like a mature audience of people, not a bunch of teenagers getting together on a Friday night and just going crazy.
Right. And that, of course, is one of the most interesting things for me because in this Son of Sam story, you have the people that you're talking about, right? These upper class, seemingly older men and women. Maybe there were women. Did you ever hear women's voices?
No, that I never heard. Never heard women's voice. Never saw a woman.
So you have all of these men here, presumably older, and then you have. And we'll talk about the Caveman in a little while. Caveman said he was part of the devil worshipping crew here. But do you, in your mind's eye, can you see Caveman hanging out with the guys that were here? Was it the same group, or was it like do you think Caveman was part of a different group?
I mean, I've never personally met Caveman. We've run into him in the woods because he used to live in the woods.
Right.
And we've run into him dozens and dozens of times. And it was always more or less, we would just kind of give him a head nod, like, okay, we know you're here. He would say the kind of the same,
Right.
you know, you're here, we're here. Let's just each go our own
Peace,
way. And
yeah.
we never conversed. We've never even as much as said a word to one another.
So you don't know what
So,
group he was a part of?
Yeah, I can't be certain to say he was a group of A or B or C for certain.
Right, and then you have the group that Berkowitz supposedly belonged to, who Caveman said never numbered more than like 6 or 7 people. How many people were in this group that you saw here in this building?
I would say that on the average occasion, what we witnessed this, we had somewhere between 10 and 12 people.
Okay.
I wouldn't think it was much more than 12 if it was.
Right.
But I would guess 10 to 12 people would be what we see.
Still more than Berkowitz. Let's go in here. Still more than Berkowitz's people. And I just don't see, you know, these older guys hanging out with a bunch of 20-year-olds. But so, you know, I'm very curious as to how many different groups of Satan worshipers were there in this freaking park.
The park had a lot of different groups of people. It was like you had cliches of people all over. You had guys that would just come up here and party and drink all the time. You had guys that were involved with more heavier stuff like drugs and whatnot. Then you had a group of kids that would actually like maybe be tickling into the whole devil worship thing, but they weren't really serious. It was like more or less like a heavy metal
thing, right.
And then you had kids that got more involved, that actually went into killing animals and stuff. And then you had the group of people which we saw here a lot, which was the older, more established people that knew what they were doing, and this was something that wasn't just like a party. This was something like a ritual that they were heavily involved in, and they were performing almost like a Sunday church session.
Like a religion to them.
Yeah.
Like a deep
Perfect.
religion.
Yep, like a religion.
Now, this is the scene, I think, of your story, your new story for us. Although, I gotta tell you, the info that you're giving us now seems so much more detailed than the previous interview. I think this interview is people are actually gonna like this one better. But this new story, and I know it's a painful story for you, Mr. E, but we talked about this beforehand, that you would relate this personal story about these activities. So if you wouldn't mind, I know that we're probably in the area where it happened. Just tell us what you know.
Sure. It actually happened not far from the Devil's Cave.
Okay.
Not in here. It was right outside the Devil's Cave. Basically, my brother, who at the time was about 12 or 13, and obviously he would be in the park with us all the time and whatnot. And one day, I guess he cut through the park for some reason, going over to the Palisade Avenue section or whatever. And I remember we were at the house, and he came blasting through the front door, and he was hysterical, crying, and his face was beet red, and it looked like he just got into a fight and got beat up pretty much from the condition he was in. And after things settled down and all, he told us a story, which I did have to talk to my mother and confirm some details, because I couldn't remember every detail of the story. But going with what I remember and with what my mother remembered was, he said he was cutting through the park, and it was probably about 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the summer, and it was still a little light, still light out, just getting to dusk. And he got grabbed by a few people, and they forced him to witness a ritual. And from what my mother thinks she remembers is they wanted him to partake in it. And he wouldn't do it, and they wound up holding him down, and they wound up killing a dog in front of him.
Oh my God.
And it just really shook him up to the point where he spent a day or two in the hospital here with trauma.
Psychological or physical trauma?
Psychological. The only physical was they actually held him, so he had a few bruises on his arms when he was trying to get away, and they were squeezing him and holding him.
Did they sexually molest him?
No, nothing with that. It was strictly, I don't know if they were trying to see if he wanted to become involved with this due to...
I would say that his answer was probably a definite no, the way he was responding.
No, it was a no. My family's always been animal lovers. We've always had multiple dogs growing up in our house.
God.
And The only thing I can confirm is talking to Mom. We can't remember if this was older teenage kids, young adults, older men. We can't remember going back. This was almost 35 years ago, so we couldn't remember what he said as far as if it was guys or kids or people. And unfortunately, my brother passed away many years ago, so obviously no way to find out from him. But yeah, they forced him to watch this ritual, and they wanted for him to partake in it, and he wouldn't do it. And they just forced him into watching it, and then they let him go after that. And
oh my God!
Like I said,
and it just shows how brazen they are, that they would do this to a person, a kid. How old was he at the time? You said 12?
12 or 13.
And how old were you at that time?
I'm a year older than him.
Older than him, okay. That they wouldn't think anything of doing that to a local kid. I wonder if they knew if he was local or not. And then they just let him go as if, you know, nothing happened, and then nothing's going to happen to them.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they knew they were protected.
You know, I mean, like I said, I really wish I would have been able to find out from Mom, or I tried finding out, because she did file a police report, and we tried to look into that, because I really would have wanted to see what his words were when he did the police came and took the interview and all, whether it was kids, people, guys, because that would have kind of pushed us into a big direction on who this was that was involved, like to that extent. If it was the people that were here, which I'd have to believe it probably wasn't the older established people here. It was probably a group of maybe late teenagers or early 20s kids that were just at that stage where they didn't know if they were going to enter into this field or not. But I can't be sure.
Maybe, right, exactly. Maybe they were more brazen because they were younger.
Yeah, we can't be sure. And it could have even been that he walked in on a ritual at that point going on. We don't know for sure. I mean, maybe it was the older class people and they were in the middle of a ritual and he stumbled in and got caught.
Right.
I mean, maybe that was the issue, and then they wanted him to do it to kill the dog, so he felt that he was involved now and he couldn't go to the police. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, that's just insane. And so, did you ever know that there was a pentagram up there?
No. This room, when I was growing up, this whole water structure thing wasn't here. This was filled with broken glass and bottles. There was a mattress in here. Someone used to be sleeping. So we really didn't do more than just peek in this room a few times. Even a few times we came across some of the dead animal carcasses in here, like some chickens and stuff. So maybe if whatever reasons, they couldn't get rid of the bodies of the animals after a ritual here, they would throw them in here for a couple hours or something. So we did come across a few small animals that were ritualized, killed, it looked like, because most of the animals, it was always the head cut off. That was the ritual that they did. They always took the head off the animal. Everything we found, dogs, chickens, I remember one time we found a calf, like a 200, 300 pound calf with the head cut off, and you're talking the neck diameter on a calf is humongous.
Yeah.
And we found a calf body. I remember that with the police coming up because they couldn't believe they couldn't believe what they were seeing. With
that
a calf with no head.
They couldn't ignore that one either.
Believe it or not, a funnier one is we found a turtle with the head cut off.
Oh my God!
Like a big snapping turtle, not something small. We're talking like a big, giant snapping turtle had the head cut off.
Oh my God! So. It seems like, yeah, there was some serious hardcore activity taking place in this joint. Did your brother ever talk about this again in his life after this incident? Like, was it like a topic of conversation in your house?
No, this was something that, I mean, I don't think anyone ever spoke of it after a couple of days since it passed, and he was really shaken up about it psychologically, and it kind of put a big dent on him. He didn't go into the park for, I couldn't even tell you, years after that. Really? He stopped going into the park for a couple of years because he was just petrified of going up and in there.
Uh-huh.
So it was never mentioned outside of a couple of days after it happened.
I'm going to try to find that police report, because if it exists, it has to be somewhere where we can find it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's important to find that. So, wow, that's heavy duty, because this is the first time we've ever spoken to anybody in this video series who has a direct story of someone who was directly affected by these cultists. We've had a few people tell us stories similar to yours about hearing people, seeing chanting, you know, seeing robed people, but never an actual, you know, victim in a sense.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that's what he was, big time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He wanted no part of that. And I mean, like I said, my guess would have to be that they tried to force him to kill the dog because they wanted to have something hang over his head so maybe he wouldn't report to the police or tell his parents, tell my parents or what have you.
Oh my God. Any other friends that you had where this similar things happened? Any other stories like that?
No, I mean, there was countless times that we would get chased through the park from different groups of people, and never from the gatehouse though, because we used to just sit up in that hill in those woods, and I mean, even if they had an idea we were there, they wouldn't be able to see us.
Right.
So never from that, but I mean, a lot of times by the Devil's Cave, up at the very top of the where the bottom of the 1,000 steps. Can't say for sure if this was just kids or heavily more involved people with the satanic thing, because once they saw us and they started chasing us, we just ran. We just took off through the park, and there was no way they were catching us.
Yeah, I would imagine that to be the case. So we're walking up to an area where Caveman brought us to, where he said that where he heard that there were potentially bodies buried there. We could bushwhack and go up this way, but it might be a little difficult. We'll go up this way and then and around.
All right.
But talk to us about the Caveman, because I've been telling people, don't sleep on Caveman. This guy actually had some important information. And, you know, quite a few people didn't believe that he was real, that his story was real. They called him a homeless drug addict. How can you believe this guy? Tell us your experiences with the Caveman.
Well, like I said, there was a guy living in the park. We called him the Woods Bum.
The Woods Bum.
And he was living in the park for I don't know how many years, but a bunch of years.
And this was in the 80s.
This was in the 80s.
Exactly when he said he was here.
And we ran into him, I don't know, a couple dozen times over the years. And it was more or less he would just kind of nod and we would nod, that we acknowledged each other and we just went our separate ways. We never had interaction with him. But I'll never forget the first day that my buddy and I came into where he had his camp set up, where he was living. And we were walking through the woods, and it was thick, heavy, and we were just walking around, messing around, and we opened up onto this little camp. And he had a blue, I think it was a blue tarpaulin coming off of a backside of a slope. And he had it propped up with some sticks for shelter. And I know he had a sleeping bag in there. I don't remember if he had a mattress on the ground or not. I can't recall.
Did he dig into the side of the mountain?
It looked like he just cleared like some of the brush and leaves and stuff. He had a 55-gallon drum with a screen over the top to catch water. And yeah, and he had a little fire pit in the middle with a chair. And he would, I guess, live there for God knows how long. And the first time we came around the bend, I remember as clear as day, he was cooking a squirrel. Well, there was a squirrel cooking. He wasn't in the camp. There was a squirrel cooking on the fire. And I'll never forget that. When we came around that corner and we saw his clearing, and we were like, wow, this looks like somebody's actually living here. And then we saw there was a little fire simmering going on, and there was a squirrel in the fire. And that was the first time we saw where he actually lived. And I'll tell you, after watching the video that you had with him, it was a little difficult even for me to watch, because the way he came across, the way he just talked, everything kind of like made it difficult, I would say, to believe a lot of what he was saying.
And he was so evasive too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, that's the guy that was in the woods, because when he took when he took you into the woods over here and showed you just a spot in the woods that nobody would know. There's no remnants of anything there anymore or anything.
Right.
And he showed you this spot in the woods. I knew right away exactly where you guys were. And even on my first video, before Caveman's video, I showed you where, I pointed out where he used to live.
It was the same exact spot.
And that was the exact same spot. And I'll tell you, a lot of the stuff he said is definitely true stuff. I mean, I don't know the guy's situation. I mean, I hear he's a homeless guy and the issues are, but all I can tell you is from a perspective for information about the park, he has probably more knowledge than most people could even imagine. He was living less than 70 yards from where the activity was going on.
Exactly.
I mean, he had to hear and see this every night.
Well, he said he was a devil worshiper. He said he was part of a devil worshiping crew, which then led me to think like there were a lot of different groups here doing this.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the group that you're talking about. It wasn't just, hey, look at what they're building. They're building a new Devil's Cave.
Oh wow.
Oh my God. It looks like they're building a new damn Devil's Cave. We'll walk up here because this is where
you know what they're doing is they're building this old water structure back up.
Right.
And I guess that's going to have something to do with
the pump house.
Pump house for the water and all.
So we're seeing it firsthand, guys, a new structure here in Untermyer Park. Of course, not as nice as the old ones with all the beautiful stonework. They'll probably put a stone facade on that, though, I would imagine, to make it fit in.
Yeah.
But here's a potentially new spot. Wow.
Yep.
It's crazy. Let's walk up this way, because I want to go to the area where the caveman showed us.
Yeah, but like I said, I can confirm a lot of what that guy said was 100% true, and he's probably got a lot more knowledge than he's even sharing.
I have a feeling that you're right about that, Mr. E. And I appreciate you telling us this because, again, I've been telling people don't sleep on the caveman. I think he's probably one of the most important, besides you and some other people we've come across. I think he's one of the most important witnesses to this whole thing, because this gets back to Maury Terry. I feel, and I don't know how you feel about it, if you have an opinion one way or another, but I feel like Maury Terry simplified things a little too much. You know? What was Maury Terry like those couple times that you met him?
He was a great guy, seemed like a nice guy. I mean, we were with him for 2 or 3 days filming and talking to him, and my parents' house was basically base camp for the show. So they were all staying there during the day, and Maury was at the house a lot over the couple of days from when he wasn't in the woods with us filming. But seemed like a nice enough guy. I mean, it seemed though that he had a lot of questions about things, but he didn't want to give you no answers. I remember a few times my parents asking him some questions, and he kind of like wouldn't really want to answer questions.
Really? That sounds actually like the Maury that I've heard about. It
seemed like he just wanted as much knowledge as he could get, and he didn't really want to let people know what he was doing with the information or how he was going to use it. But he just wanted all the information he could gather. Probably like a good reporter.
Right, exactly. Or a cop.
Yeah, exactly.
Now this was the area that the caveman brought us to, this area here. And he said that this is where the bodies were.
Yeah, this little walk path we're on, this was never here.
Right, exactly.
This was all thick, heavy woods. Even that stone path that we were just walking on down there, that thing was so over covered with brush you couldn't walk on it.
Right.
I mean, you were walking on the aqueduct path all the way down, or you were up in the park. This was all no paths, no way to navigate. I mean, you had to know where you were going up here.
So this was a dead area. It wasn't like people were walking through here. There was no path.
No. You would never see someone in here. I think the day we came through here with the camp, if he would have seen us, he would have been more shocked than we were.
Right.
Because he would have been, how the hell did you guys find me?
Well, it seems so exposed now. There's like hardly any trees, but there seems to have been, there probably was a lot more trees back then and shrubs and brush in this, in this spot.
Yeah, this whole area was really, really heavily wooded. and I mean, all kinds of vines and leaves and brush. I mean, you couldn't see the river back then from here like you can now.
Right.
I mean, they cut a lot of trees down in this area. Like I said, they have a footpath here.
Now,
they completely cleared that rock road down there. That
Right.
was never opened like that. It was all heavy brush and stuff.
Now, I'm glad I got you up to this spot, because this is the spot where you said the caveman. Whereabouts was he? I mean, I know it looks completely different.
I would have to say he was probably, I'm thinking he might have been right in here, because the hill comes down.
Right.
And I mean, this was probably all eroded a lot more, so it was a lot steeper back then too.
Right.
And he actually had his tarpaulin pitched coming off of this. He dug into the back a little. And then he would have the tarpaulin coming off the top. So I would say it's probably like right here or right there. I mean,
in the steeper part of the hill, though, because this seems like to be the steepest part, right around here.
Yeah. Like I said, back then, from what I remember, this was a steeper grade too. I think erosion has weathered this down a bit.
Now, does he talked about there being a couple shafts here, a couple of holes in the ground that went down 20 feet. Do you have any recollection of those?
No, those I don't.
Because he said that's where he said the bodies were.
Okay.
That there were bodies buried in this park, and that they were in this area around here, like where we're standing right now.
Yeah, I'm not. The only thing I know around this area is you have the Mr. Williams hole, which is back up over there.
Right.
And then I know about a bunch of stuff actually in the park, and some of the stuff closer towards like the Odell Avenue section by over towards where the Devil's Cave is.
Is there stuff still there? We won't go there today, but is there stuff still there?
Everything by the Devil's Cave is done.
It's gone.
Is wiped out completely from when they built the lot and all. One big room that's up in the, I looked when we came in, and there was a big room underground in the actual park, but it looks like it's covered over with dirt and then grass on top of it. So to get in there, you'd have to literally dig all of that stuff.
Right.
So I'm sure most of the structures outside of the Devil Cave, the rooms are there,
right, but
they're all covered over and eroded at this point. With,
I need to get in there, man. I want to see the old graffiti. I want to see it all. Let's walk up towards this way a little bit, because we're almost done. So this was an amazing tour. I actually think that this tour was, we hit our stride on today's tour, much more than that first one.
Yeah, well, a lot of things after I did that first interview with you, over the last month or two or whatever it's been, things just pop into my head. I mean, because it's been 35 years almost, and
right.
I mean, you put a lot of things back in the back of your mind. You don't think about them. I mean, that incident with my brother, I've never even thought of that until recently, when you asked me some questions and we went through that first interview.
Right.
I couldn't even remember that in my mind. I mean, because it was so long ago, and probably a lot of other things buried deep in the back of my head.
I wonder. We're gonna have to get those out of you. But anything else that you Well, one thing I wanted to cover before we end is just because we did touch upon this in the first video, but since we're kind of making a part two and, you know, some of the same information, the cops, the police who would talk to your parents, didn't they say something about how they knew what was going on here and not to get involved? Like, what was the story with that?
Yeah. Actually, for the new viewers that didn't see the first video, my father did find a body once in a suitcase. And it was more that way. But
in this park, though?
Yeah. Yep.
What year?
This was back. Oh boy, I want to say in the late '80s. He used to jog the Aqueduct path every day. He was a track and field star in school, and he used to jog the path every single day. And he wound up jogging down the path one day, and he saw like a newer style suitcase. And this was in the heavily wooded section off the Aqueduct path going down towards Warburton Avenue. There's, I don't know, maybe a 70 or 80 foot section of heavy thick woods, and he saw this suitcase and he thought, why would somebody throw a pretty nice looking suitcase into the woods off the Aqueduct path? And he walked down and he unzipped it, and he saw body parts. It was a body, I don't know, cut up or something, but
Oh my God.
obviously called the police, and they came and they removed it and did a report and all. And sometime later on, weeks or months later, one of the officers he ran into told him that it was a mob-related incident, nothing to do with stuff in the park, because that was his concern, was that something that happened in the park.
They were starting to kill people now.
Yeah, now it would have been a different story for me and my brother to come into the woods if that happened.
Right.
So that was that incident. And but yeah, at some point, because like I said, my father and mother used to call the police all the time when they saw the headlights going by. And at some point, I think it might have been when we found the calf with the head cut off, he pulled one of the cops aside that he kind of knew a little bit, and he was like, look, you know, what the hell's going on here? I mean, my kids play in this park, and we're finding animals, and they're getting bigger. He's like, and the cop basically told him, he just said, look, he said, we know what's going on. It's controlled, and just leave it alone. Just keep the kids out of the park after dark, and you won't have any problems. So it was kind of like they knew what was happening, and they didn't want to do anything for whatever reason.
Sounds like it. That's insane. Because think about how much they could have, like you said before, they could have cut off Odell Avenue and got all these people.
Yep.
There was ample opportunity. Wait, I think I see a hole in that wall.
Oh yeah, they could have caught these people. I couldn't even tell you how many times, because every time we saw the headlights go down and there was something going on, my parents called, and they could have easily have just blocked off the road and caught the people.
Yeah, nothing there. It's just the stone that's missing.
Yeah.
Because this is where Mr. Williams' hole was. Right above here, I believe. Yeah, they could have caught these people. It sounds like the police kind of just didn't want to get involved. Maybe they knew people, I don't know, you can't speculate, but.
Yeah, I mean, from what we heard over the years was the established group that was doing this, the older people, there was a lot of upper class people, doctors, I mean, people of wealth, politicians. I mean, so obviously if that's what's going on, you don't want to pull people like that into the mud, you know?
Right, exactly.
So it was more or less just let them be, let them do what they're doing, and they won't bother anyone. And I guess in one aspect it's good, but it's not right.
No, and they ended up bothering, well, I don't know if it was the same group that ended up, you know, kind of abducting your brother, but they did end up bothering someone.
Yeah.
Someone close to you.
Yep.
Anyway, anything else that we've kind of forgot to talk about today? I don't think so.
I think we've covered everything pretty much from the first interview, with maybe a few extra
we got some extra
footage.
Stuff. We've been out here almost an hour. I think that's pretty much it. So, Mr. E, you did great. I want to thank you so much for coming out again.
Anytime.
I know that the story about your brother was definitely painful to revisit, but I think having that oral history on tape for people to assess and to listen to, I think that's very important for us to gain more perspective as to what was going on in this damn park.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there was a lot of stuff going on.
So I want to thank you for sharing that with us, and you know, hopefully we're not done. I'm sure that the audience would actually love to have a question and answer session with you, so maybe we'll get you on a Monday night show one day where people can zoom in.
Sure.
Because you're part of the family now, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, guys, well listen, great episode today. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you at the next video. Thanks a lot.